So we've had Richard's tried my yogurt and I got the thumbs up.
You need to try this yogurt. It is just spectacular. It's made with pure cream, right?
It's made with pure cream and the really pure cream stuff. So like the 54% fat.
Nice.
So you know, because some people might still be slightly a little bit phobic. Is that okay? Like the fact that I've put in 54% fat into my yogurt, like what's it going to do to me?
Yeah. And so you'll burn it for energy.
Yeah. And
the more energy you eat, the more your body tries to compensate by making you burn more energy. Mm-hmm. That's not unlimited. I mean, you can't. I mean, if you eat till you're full, and then go out and eat another 1,000 calories, you do that every day. Eventually, you're going to put on weight, and your body won't be able to defray that by making you burn enough energy. Yeah. But fat is just a source of energy. There's nothing magical about it.
So by eating my fatty yogurt, I'll turn into super mum.
You already were before the yogurt.
So I'll be even super duper mum. So I'll have the energy. But I find, because I've started amping up my training. So I'm doing weights now, resistance training. I still do some cardio. I still enjoy cardio. But I was finding that I was still, peckish might be the right word. I was just feeling like there was something missing, and when I started making my yogurt, it was like this little bit of fat and oomph that I could have, and I just found having it after dinner, I was filling myself up with something, and I'd feel so much better waking up in the morning. Do we need energy at night time when we're sleeping?
Of course, we're using energy all the time.
Yes.
So, you know, the interesting thing about the body is that the process that consumes more energy in our body than any other process is transporting sodium out of our cells and potassium into our cells. Okay. It's a simple thing. I mean, you would think breathing and heartbeat, brain running, cogitation. No, it's just pumping our sort of primordial C out of our cells is what uses the most energy. So you use energy all the time, and how much energy you store is a function of how good the times are, how much energy you're able to get access to. But also how bad the times are. You know, the body tends to buffer the environment. So, for example, you will put on fat before the winter because the body needs to buffer that, needs to make sure that you've got enough energy. It'll reduce your metabolic rate as winter starts so that you're not using as much energy as you were using in summer. So all of these things are homeostases that all contribute to your body's goal is to try and keep you alive long enough to reproduce.
Yep. Okay. No, it makes a lot of sense. My dad has some blood tests done, I think now over almost a 3-year, but definitely 2 seasonal changes. So you can see a winter period and a summer period. You can actually see the changes. They're exactly the same for each. So each winter is exactly the same. Each summer is exactly the same, but they are different.
He has seasonal variability.
Yes, because his body is doing what it's naturally supposed to do. So he'll carry just a little bit more weight on him via the scales when it's winter. But then when summer approaches, his body automatically balances itself back out because you obviously are. You know, summer we're out in the sun, we're running around. We're Aussies, we go to the beach, we go to the pool, we're doing lots of things. So that makes a lot of sense. Because I know a lot of people do have fluctuations, women especially, we have fluctuations monthly.
Yes.
So therefore we'll also have seasonal fluctuations. And I know a lot of people, and especially women here, I will say this, they get very scared because all of a sudden they're doing really well. And then the next minute, I've put on 2 kilos, I've put on 5 kilos, but it's winter, we're coming into winter. And for women, our bodies do naturally do other things as well because we've got to last as women. We've got lots of other biochemical, I think that's the right word, I'm using a big word. Yeah. We've got lots of other things going on inside our bodies that our bodies are doing. So we do need extra fuel sometimes, and yeah, it's very interesting. So, but people get very, very concerned sometimes when they've put on.
So weight is a really bad measure.
Okay.
Weight doesn't really tell you a lot. You can go out and drink a litre of water, stand on the scale, and you'll put on a kilogram.
Yep.
Does that say anything interesting about your?
Just says you weighed a kilo before the water.
Exactly. Or you can go out and have a big poo.
Yeah.
And lose weight. I went there. I'm sorry. I think we got a fibre.
Hey, I'm a mum. Poo is one of my daily subjects.
So the actual amount that you weigh doesn't really tell you a lot about your metabolic health.
Okay. No, that's really interesting because I think, you know, especially being a female and growing up in the 80s, even people before me, so the 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s for the most part, weight was the biggest thing. Because you would get weighed. I was an athlete. You would get weighed. I remember having the AIS come to my school to do. I was chosen for a specialist kayaking team, and we had to do weight, BMI, height, because they wanted to see how I was going to grow, because they wanted me to fit in a kayak. It's very interesting at the time. I had to do breathing tests. It was very, very interesting. But weight was such a big deal. I mean, I also had to face the weight thing when I was anorexic, but that was a very big deal then.
I had the opposite problem. The sports that I was playing, you needed to have more weight. So rugby, for example, I mean, you needed to put on bulk. You needed to put on bulk before the season. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, for men, it's generally in society, it's less of an issue for men, but it's not of an issue for men.
Yes.
So, you know, it becomes an issue as well. I think for me, a sign of metabolic health, if you were to look at a person, is not necessarily how much fat they are, but if the fat that they have is in inappropriate places. So, for example, you can see one of the last places. So the body tends to put fat in good places first, average places next, and then really bad places last. And you can actually see that, for example, under the chin, people who put on a lot of fat underneath the chin, that's one of the last places that the body, it's got nowhere else to put it, so it's going to throw it, it's going to basically put it underneath the veranda. Okay. And so, you know, that's a sign. You can see people on a ketogenic diet, they may not lose a lot of fat around their waist, but they'll lose a lot of fat around. All of a sudden, they'll get necks again. You know, and that's one sign. I mean, central adiposity has always been an issue, which is why measurement of girth around the belly is a better measurement than height or weight or any of the other things that go into BMI. But you know, for the most part, I think storing fat inappropriately, and then, you know, you change somebody's diet, and 6 months later, all the fat under their chin is gone. They look totally different. They basically, they started out at the beginning of the diet with just the average fat person's face. They have no unique characteristics, and by the end of the 6 months, they've gotten back their unique, beautiful face that's theirs and theirs alone. So, you know, that's you see it all the time in people doing keto. So that's a remarkable thing.
Is there a difference between, I mean, there is a difference, but what is the difference, and why do men tend to become a little bit more fat adapted than women? Is it because of our chemistry makers? Because women have many cycles we fluctuate between?
To be honest, I don't know the answer to that. Okay. The monthly cycles for women are going to make a difference because it's going to be swinging you from one end of the energy consumption spectrum to the other. I guess that's going to be an issue. I don't know why men become more fat adapted. I don't even know if that's the case. Okay. But it certainly, women will carry more fat just because they have to hold that as a buffer for pregnancy. And then once pregnancy is no longer an issue, they store weight in different places. So, for example, a woman who is childbearing age will store fat a lot in the lower body, around the thighs and the buttocks, and then that fat is basically, that saturated fat then gets turned into breast milk in the process of a pregnancy. And one of the best ways to lose weight, one of the best weight loss plans, is having a child and breastfeeding. Yes. Because you're just squeezing saturated fat out of your body at a prodigious rate, as fast as a child can eat. Twins would be twice as good as this. So, you know, so... Well, you have a giant child like I do, who was at 18 months the size of a 3-year-old, and I used to have to feed her. But I made it to 24, I was 26 months feeding her. Wow. So that's impressive. So, you know, I mean, men don't have that option, so we've got to go out. Okay. You do it in other ways. Yes. Yeah. Okay. No, that's really interesting. I mean, I could talk to you all day, and I do. I always send you my questions, but we should probably have a look and see what other people want to ask you. Pete, how do I get the questions? I told you this would be entertainment, Pete.
I can scroll down if that's what you want.
Yeah, we can scroll using that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we can use it.
You can use that trackpad. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Richard's also tech too, so I just stand here and look pretty.
So these questions have all been answered, so we have no more new questions. Somebody said, I recently saw a video where the presenter said that people eat more fruit in preparation for winter because it adds to body fat. Is this nonsense? No, it's actually true. Not just people, bears too. There is an hypothesis that type 2 diabetes is a remnant of the mammalian hibernation pathway. And that we know that, for example, that a bear becomes diabetic at the end of summer. And a bear that finds a bush full of berries will eat every single berry on the bush, will gorge them. And the glucose and fructose help the bear to eat more energy than it needs because it's going to need it during the winter period. So humans, the theory is that human diabetes may be as simple as perpetual hibernation preparation and never getting to the hibernation bit. So that's certainly not nonsense that humans eat more fruit in preparation for winter, and it actually makes sense because that's when the food was available. So fruiting trees want to get planted so that they're ready, so that the seeds are ready for spring. So what they want to do is and fruit is designed by the plant to be eaten so that it could be essentially planted in some feces, in some fertilizer. And so, it's in the tree's interest, in the tree that's making fruit, it's in its interest to make sure that everything is high sugar right at the end of summer and just ready to rot and to be eaten, and for maximum reproductive function. So, and we just happen to be, animals that eat fruit just happen to be part of the tree's reproductive cycle.
I think lunch break is over.
Oh.
So I'm ringing the lunch bell. So I hope you've all had a lovely little break and you've enjoyed Richard answering some questions, and I will hand you over to Dr. Liz and Dr. Liz.